Good morning, class. My name is Elizabeth Bachiro. Nice to meet you. Welcome to this course, Profundización de Estructuras Lingüísticas Complejas. I will be your instructor during this semester. Professor Darío Mena will also accompany me. And in Junín, Professora Liliana Costa will be your instructor. As you know, this will be our teaching and learning environment because at this moment there is only one important thing, and this is stay home and save lives. So I also want to tell you that above this file you will find the syllabus of the course, the class schedule. There is also a welcome file with some information as regards our meetings, the time I will be online and the other teachers will be online so that we can have a kind of interaction. And there is also, and the most important thing, the practice booklet that you will need to use during this course. So please download it because you're going to work with the booklet. Okay, so now we're going to start with Unit 1. In Unit 1, we're going to revise some concepts related to kinds of sentences. So let's start. Well, first of all, we're going to start with the concepts of compound and complex sentences. And as you know, when we speak about compound and complex sentences, we're speaking about sentences containing more than one clause. Yeah? And the way these clauses are joined in a sentence has to do with coordination and subordination. So we can say that compound and complex sentences can be made so by means of coordination and subordination. So let's have a look at these sentences. For example, Kathy is a nurse. I sent you an email. Or my brother is doing a course in business. What kind of sentences are these ones? They are simple sentences. Why? Because they contain just one clause. And as you must remember, a clause contains always a subject and a verb. But if you look at the second set of sentences, for example, I washed the dishes and I dried them, or John is poor but he's happy, or you can take the bus or stay home, or stay here. These sentences are sentences that are joined or connected by a coordinating conjunction. So we say that these are compound sentences. They contain more than one clause. Now, there is another type of sentences that we have exemplified below. For example, after finishing his work, he went home. Or I went to bed early yesterday because I was tired. I didn't get the job, though I had all the necessary qualifications. These sentences also contain two clauses, but the relationship between the clauses is a different one. In these cases, there is a main clause and there is a dependent clause introduced by a subordinating conjunction, as you can see in after, because, although. So we can say that sentences connected by a coordinating conjunction, the clauses stand at the same hierarchical level. They are independent clauses and they can stand on their own. while in subordination there is always one clause that is dependent on the other, on the main, and in isolation that clause will be it will not have meaning. It will not be meaningful. Yeah. So in this course we're going to study more complex structures. We're going to revise many of the ones that we have already seen, and we're going to see some more complex structures, and these are of course complex sentences where two, three or more clauses are combined in one sentence, yeah, including coordination and subordination. So that's very important, and that's very typical of the English language, especially in the written form, yeah. So now, just to remind you, or to have a quick revision, to remember that there are correlative coordination and coordinating conjunctions, yeah. When we speak about correlative coordination, we mean coordinating conjunctions that have more than one word. For example, either or both and, or neither nor, or not only but also. Yeah, there you have some examples. You can have a look at them later and see how we use them. The important thing here is the form of the verb that you will use with each of them. In some cases, the verb will be singular, that is, I have identified here with verb singular, or verb plural. Yes, verb singular for neither nor, or verb in the plural in the other forms, both and. So it's very important that you have this very clear. Now we can also consider the importance of complex coordination. This usually occurs in more elaborated styles in written English, yeah, more formal probably, and we speak about a premeditated style. What is particular about complex coordination is that coordination in which the conjoins are combinations of units. What does it mean? It means that here there is strong parallelism between the conjoins. The structures are exactly the same. And this is important, and this is very common. Let's have a look at examples. We gave William a book on stamps and Mary a book on painting. Yeah, so the structures are exactly the same. Thus, indirect object and direct object. Yeah. Or, for example, in the second case, Jack painted the kitchen white and the bathroom blue. So the both complements after the verb are object and then an object complement. Yes? Well, and now let's go into clauses. That's just a quick revision and some important aspects to keep in mind. You know that clauses are the principal structures of which sentences are composed. We know that a clause contains two elements that are always present: a subject and a verb. When we speak about sentences, we say a sentence may consist of one or more than one clause. Yeah? But in order to have a clause, you need two elements, the subject and the verb. When we study clauses, we can study them considering different aspects or analyzing different aspects of a clause. So this is very important because this is what we have done in Grammar 1, in Grammar 2 basically. For example, if we consider the clause elements, as in here in A, if we consider clause elements, we can say that the clause contains a subject, verb, object, etc. And the verb patterns from these elements will be SV, if it contains just a verb, or SVO if the clause contains subject, verb, and object, or SVOC if the clause contains subject, verb, and object complements. Then we can also analyze the verb phrase structure within the clause. And so we classify the verb phrase into finite clauses, non-finite clauses, or verbless. Finally, we can also analyze the clause function. That means the function of the clause within the sentence. And in this way, we classify, or considering this aspect, we classify clauses into nominal clauses, adverbial clauses, and adjectival clauses. Well, and now we're going to devote specifically, we're going to devote our revision to subordination. That means clauses in which depend on a main clause. Well, when we speak about finite, non-finite, and verbless clauses, we're analyzing, or we are looking at the verb phrase structure. For example, the first one, he could play the piano when he was 5. This is an example of finite clause. Why? Because the verb phrase has a verb in the finite form. Remember that modal verbs are always considered finite. 1. In the second example, after having left the office, he went home by car. So in the second example, that ing construction in having is an example of a non-finite verb phrase. So this is a non-finite clause. Do you understand? And finally, if we say the house now on sale looks different, the clause now on sale has no verb form. So we say that this clause is verbless. Well, another aspect that at this time or this level of your studies you have to know and be able to identify are the different signals of subordination. Grammarians have presented this in this way. All these aspects that I'm going to mention now are signals of subordination or indicate subordination. For example, the use of that. For example, I hope that you will like this place. I hope that. So that when that introduces a clause, with me, that means that that clause is subordinated or dependent on the main. B, a subordinating conjunction. I'll be surprised if he can do it, which is a subordinating conjunction in this example. If introduces a clause that expresses condition, an adverbial clause expressing condition. So the subordinating conjunction is always present, but it's not the only way of indicating or expressing subordination. Well, let's see another case. For example, in C, a WH word indicates subordination. We asked him where he had been all night. That where introduces a subordinated clause. Apart from, you always have two clauses. You have to identify two different clauses at least in order to speak about subordination, right? Okay. D, inversion is also another indicator of subordination. For example, had I known, I wouldn't have come. This is an example of, again, of a conditional sentence. And finally, E, lack of a finite verb. As I said before, remember the ing construction in the second example, after having left the office? Well, So that is a clause. That clause contains a non-finite verb phrase.